next gen 911 can ease the burden, especially this for because you can send a call, you know, those few calls that exceed the staffing levels.
If they're comfortable with other PSAP center.
Yeah, if they were, what is the number? I mean, if it's not material, then it doesn't matter. If it's huge, then it's something that some places could look at based.
Yep.
But I don't know what that extra capacity is.
I could look at that next year for average peak. Maybe the difference between the minimum and the peak. Well, that might be interesting.
I mean, you almost have to map.
Hi, how you doing? Okay. Yep. You're gonna stay for his part of the presentation, right?
Yeah. And then he said, I saw that you I actually got involved with that, not in this year.
Oh yeah. Well, he's up next, so.
Yeah, no, that's why I can't.
We'll be getting started in 2 minutes. 2 minutes till start time. Thank you.
The guy is setting up, and he just asked if he could get a signature on both of these pages, and then this is your copy. Yes, on each page.
Digital age, I never carry a pen anymore.
I know. Yeah, you're good.
Thank you for doing that, man. Appreciate it. I just went ahead and
I just wrote the website and I didn't go check it out yet, but I was like,
sorry, I took my time. It's hard to write at least to gauge exactly how long it's going to take to get through.
So we're meeting the sheriff's office at 10. Yep, and then well, it's 1:30. And if we get done early, we might just
Where do you want to stand? Okay, if you'd like, I'll sit here. Okay. Forward the slides for you. I can switch it over to the browser when you're ready.
yeah, I mean, it's probably be good for a solid hour.
Those who are playing the home game.
Okay.
Okay, we're running a little behind schedule, so we need to go ahead and get started. If those of you out in the hallway, if you wouldn't mind making your way back in, we'll get started very shortly. Thank you. Did they hear that? Those of you out in the hallway, can you hear me?
And I think Mike Wallace just wanted to.
Okay. We're getting ready to get started. If you wouldn't mind making your way back in, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
If one thing don't work, what?
Yeah.
Are you Brad?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's got a hall speaker button, but it might just be there to make me feel good. I don't know. Might not actually do anything.
The command center?
Yes. I'll make a couple more announcements before we get started. Okay, a couple announcements before we get started again. I neglected to do introductions for the online people earlier today. So for those who are participating by webcast, we have Beth Dobransky, Bruce Romero, Ginny Bultman, Chan, I believe that's probably Chan McCall, Christy McCormick, Connie Johnson, Don Werfino, Janine White, John Hutchins, Kara Thielen, Karen Marquez, Karen Kretzel, Kim, don't know the last name for Kim, Mark Turner, Matt Gage, Phil Campbell, Pitkin County Dispatchers, all of them. Shelley Lesnansky, and of course Jeff Irvin back in the control room, and Wade Sandstrom. So thank you to those of you who even if you couldn't participate in person, you made the time today to participate by webcast. We appreciate it. And I do want to say thank you to Jefferson County for, again, allowing us the use of this room for this multiple webcams and everything that it's got set up, and it makes it a really an ideal place to do this, so appreciate that. Our next presentation is from Brian Shepard. Most of you know Brian Shepard because he used to be with Adams County 911 and was the chair of the PUC's 911 task force for several years, I believe. And now he's with the Governor's Office of Information Technology, here to give an update on their activities. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Daryl. So for those of you who were sick of seeing me, I'm sorry. You have to see me again. For the rest of you, it is wonderful to be back. Thank you. As Daryl said, I'm Brian Shepard with the Office of Information Technology. And Daryl just asked me to kind of give an overview of what we're doing as it relates to 911. We're doing a lot of things at OIT, focusing on broadband, which, you know, technically doesn't affect 911 right now, but looking forward, you know, it's going to have a big effect. So, you know, everything I'm talking about here, that's really our focus is broadband. So the group I'm with, that's all of our focus is you know, figuring out the broadband problem throughout the state. So we got several programs at OIT that are focusing on broadband, as I said. The first one is the Broadband Mapping and Data Development Program. And that is led by John Gottsagen, my colleague, who is trying to hide back in the corner over there. Some of you might know John. We're going to get to the map here a little bit. The other program, which John also manages, but a different gentleman is implementing, is the GIS Addressing Program. And that is Nathan Lowry here at OIT as well. So if any of you hear or see Nathan coming down and asking you questions, he is legitimate. I know he's he's had me jump on calls because people have questioned whether or not what he's doing. And I'll get into a little bit what he is doing. But yes, Nathan is real and he is trying to help. So distance learning, won't really talk a lot about that, doesn't affect you, but we're trying to do some really cool stuff with distance learning and broadband as well. And then the last two obviously probably have the biggest impacts on 901, which is the broadband planning and strategy focus, and obviously FirstNet coming down the pipe. So we'll kind of go through these quickly. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to kind of blow through this pretty quick so we can have any questions afterwards, but if you do have any questions right away, please feel free to jump in. So.
Hey Brian, we're getting some complaints on the web. We need to hold the mic a little further when we get to the solution.
Hold it further?
Farther away.
Farther away? Okay, sorry. So our mapping and data program. This began back in 2008, 2009 with a grant from the NTIA. It was part of the original BTOP program. All states got one of these. Essentially what it is an effort to map broadband speeds as advertised throughout the state, which then feeds into the national NTIA broadband map. So John helped write the grant to get that and put the initial program together, and now has a full team. And really what we're doing is focusing on identifying broadband speeds. Where is broadband? And again, this is defined by the NTIA as broadband, which is, John, what's the official 2 up?
Well, they haven't really changed their definition since the FCC made it 4 down and 1 up.
Yeah, so when we say, for this definition of broadband is 4 down and 1 up, which, there's about 15 different definitions of broadband. That's one of the things we're wrestling with. But what John's team is doing is going out and collecting advertised speeds from providers. So we have about 75 broadband providers throughout the state that have given us data. We then have a team of folks that go through this data and sift through it and map it out so that you can actually see where broadband is and where it is not. The purpose of this is to show where there's unserved and underserved areas that we'll be focused on. And we'll get to that here in a minute. But, and really, it's really kind of cool because we're focusing on both wireless, fixed and mobile, and wireline. So we're really trying to cover the whole technology swath of where is broadband, where do we have connections, where do we not have connections. And then one of the really cool things that John's team just implemented recently was what we call speed tests. So from your home, you can go and basically go to the website and click on it, and it'll tell you exactly what your speed is. And the great thing about that is because there are some providers that will say, oh, we provide 10 down and 5 up in this area. Well, maybe 2 or 3 homes in that area get 10 down and 5 up. The rest maybe get, a half down and a quarter up. And so what this allows you to do is from a specific address point, we can find out what your speed for broadband is. It basically helps us get much better refined data. And then we can work with those carriers, to identify as to how, why is it that, these folks are getting less than your advertising. So it's a really powerful tool that we can use. So Jeff, Daryl's going to switch real quick. So this is the broadband map. And what it's on right now, you can see the color tiers, and this is speed tiers. So you can scroll, you can zoom in throughout the state, so you can see where the speed tiers there on the left-hand side of the screen, the different download speeds that we have. Obviously, in the Denver metropolitan area, we got pretty fast download speeds. Throughout a good part of the state, you see nothing because there is nothing out there for broadband. And then throughout the population centers in the western slope and the eastern plains, you'll see obviously with the population centers there's various degrees of broadband. Some good, some not so good. So this is really cool. You can go through, you can search for wireless. As I said, you can look at what the wireless speeds are in your area, what the wired speeds are. We include fixed wireless. A lot of the folks in the western slope use fixed wireless to get to their communities for the last mile. So it really does a good job of doing that. And then if you want to go, Daryl, this is, hold on a sec. Yeah, you go and look on that speed test up there. So this is the speed test. So all you need to do is go in there, fill out the information, and hit submit speed test. It will essentially send us your data. It'll send us your address and the results of that speed test, and it will then become part of our data set where we map all of the broadband speeds throughout the state. So it's really cool. And again, all this gets funneled into the national NTIA broadband map, which is being used to kind of guide, grant opportunities and some of the issues, the regulatory issues at the federal level. So really neat stuff.
May I go back?
Yeah, go back to the PowerPoint slide. So there's the URL down there. So also Daryl will have this. So if you ever want to go check it out, please go. Again, it's not directly related to 911, but when we're talking about trying to get money and resources to increase broadband, knowing that's the direction 911's going, in the long run it will help us. So, okay, slide. All right, addressing. So this is again part of the same grant from the NTIA. And what the goal for this grant is to create a statewide GIS, geocoded address data set for the entire state, every address in the state, if we can get it. And the data set development our goal is to create a public safety grade data set development. And as I said, the gentleman, Nathan Lowry, who's going to be here but got sick, is working with a lot of folks, and he's already started working with some of the folks that are in the 911 community to really say, okay, what do we need in terms of a GIS data set to make it useful for public safety? You know, a lot of GIS data sets that are out there contain maybe a half or a quarter of the information that public safety really needs. So Nathan's goal is to make this public safety grade, and he's working with both Front Range and rural 911 centers to get their data, figure out how they clean it, what do they need to get this. And he's essentially building a data set that can be used to compile essentially, like I said, a geocoded data set for the entire state, which has a tremendous amount of potential uses. Obviously, for the broadband mapping is its initial goal, but we're talking CAD systems. You know, a lot of folks don't have the resources for some of the newer CAD systems that rely heavily on GIS. This can help. Obviously, Reverse 911. You would now have a statewide Reverse 911 fully geocoded data set. Next Gen 911, obviously everyone knows what the implementations of GIS with Next Gen 911 are, and emergency response planning, being able to know addresses out there. So Nathan, again, if you hear from Nathan or if you hear that name come up, you know, that is his goal, and so he's trying to reach all of the authority boards, all the areas, to say what data do you have and how do you manipulate it, because obviously everyone does it a little bit differently. So he's trying to create the data set to encompass everything that we need to make it useful for public safety. So it's a really neat project. And I don't, John, when's the delivery date on that? When does that have to be done by?
Well, we were hoping to get about, I'm trying to remember the statistics that Nathan had, but about 60% of the state done by the end of this year. I think we may be a little behind on that.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So our initial goal was to get 60% of the state in the data set by the end of the year. We are a little bit behind on that, but that's that's our goal, and the grant will continue through 2014. So that's this is something that's really kind of kicking into high gear with that. So. Okay. All right, planning and strategy. This is where my main focus is. So my primary goal is to develop a statewide broadband strategy, not necessarily for public safety or any one entity, but overall strategy for public, for private, for working with the carriers to basically get broadband out throughout the state. Because there's a lot of areas out within the state that really have, if they have broadband, it doesn't quite meet the requirements, and folks are really desperate out there for it. So that's my goal, is to try to figure out how to solve that problem. Obviously, with the geography and the local control of this state, it makes it a little more difficult than some others from the carrier perspective. So that's one of my, what's one of the things I'm working on, is trying to get the carriers together to say, hey, how can we solve this? And realizing they need to make money to go out and offer services. So how can we help them do that for the private sector? We also have what we call local technology planning teams. These were started about 2 years ago. The goal with this, again, from the NTIA grant, was to get out in the local communities and start identifying issues and developing solutions at a local level. Knowing that up in Fort Morgan, their issues are a lot different than over in Delta. And so what we did is we had an individual who was going out there and essentially would go out in the communities, get together the local officials, local business owners, citizens, public safety officials, schools, anyone involved and that wanted to see better broadband, and start developing these teams to identify and say, okay, what is it that we need as a community for broadband? And what we started to find was that a lot of these communities had a lot more need than the carriers thought. So once we could get these folks together and say, hey, do you realize this community has a lot of need for this? All of a sudden the carriers said, oh, well, I guess it does make sense for me to get out there and put the capital investment to get broadband out there. So that really was our goal. Our initial goal was to have 4 teams in place. We're now up to 17. And we're hopefully going to start one up in the northeast part of the state here in the next couple weeks. So it's a really neat concept, and it's been very successful. Chaffee County right now is working on getting some additional broadband capacity up into Chaffee County. The areas down in the southwest part of the state, down in Durango and Cortez, are doing some great things. So we're really starting to see some traction in some of these and getting folks involved with this. And I'll touch back on these a little bit later when we talk about FirstNet. So, and then some of the specific projects, the part, kind of an offshoot of a strategy is to be involved in telecom reform. So I've had the wonderful chance to join Lynn traveling around through the state and at the PUC hearings. So from OIT, while we're not trying to dictate what happens with this, obviously we understand it's important that we would be aware of it. So we're actively working with the PUC and again with the carriers and so forth to try to figure out, as this telecom process goes forward, what do we need to do? It was great. Both Connie and Carl, we saw them last week. And they did a good job of really telling the commissioners that, whatever we need to do, we need to have 911 be represented in that, and that, make sure you understand the effects of any reform that it may have on 911. So I thought it was very important that those guys got out there and spoke to that. So, and Walt actually too, Walt Hardesty from Washington Yuma was out in Fort Morgan a couple weeks ago. So the voice is out there. So that's again, we want to be engaged with that. Working with CDOTs. So this has been kind of a hot topic. I remember when I was sitting in your seat too. And it's even been people yelling at me more now. But why don't we engage CDOT in this? Well, the answer is we are. So we've had some excellent conversations with CDOT in the last month. We're working with them to identify how it is they work with their rights of ways and offer them to both public and private entities, what kind of fiber they have, what are the rules surrounding it. So we're really starting to develop a good relationship with them, knowing that they own some of the optimum rights of ways throughout the state. And if we want to solve broadband in some of the rural communities, we need those rights of ways and access to those. And so that's one of the things we are working on very actively. And kind of dovetails with that is statewide asset inventory. I'm actually putting together the final proposal for some funding right now to essentially hire resources to put together an inventory of all broadband assets that the state owns, whether that be fiber, towers, rights of way, microwave links. If you can run broadband over it, we want to have it in a database so that we know where it is, what it is, and then we can build off of that. So hopefully within the next few months, if that plan goes, if it goes according to plan, we'll have some resources available. That will be their job, is to figure out what we have here in the state. Obviously, we'll focus on the state first. If your local municipalities or counties are interested in being part of that, we will welcome that. But our initial focus will be the state. So the College Strategic Broadband Plan that I mentioned just briefly, just want to kind of throw up here, the vision and mission that were developed, as well as 5 key priorities. So the vision is pretty far-reaching, but essentially it covers what we want. That we said all Coloradans should have access to broadband, affordable broadband service. It was pretty interesting when I was out in Fort Morgan. There was two folks that came in. One ran a dairy operation, one ran a cattle or a corn operation, and they both talked about how they could, the woman could monitor her cow. She could tell me exactly where every one of her cows were by GPS. She could tell me the last time that cow was milked, how much it produced, and when it was supposed to be milked again. And then she went on to say, I can't upload my 4-letter word payroll file to the internet because my broadband stinks to pay my people. So, it really showed that, that we need broadband out there to affect everyone. And so you see the 5 key priorities there. One of the things that people have asked me is, okay, well, where's the money from the state to put in broadband? And I say, well, I don't have any money. So really what our goal is to try to bring people together, knowing that we don't have money to go lay fiber down where we need to, but other people do. So let's work together to try to get that problem solved. So that's kind of the outlines of the strategic broadband plan. Local technology planning teams, as I alluded to here, 17 throughout the state and growing. Localized solutions are the key here. When I get to the FirstNet elements, I want to kind of talk about how this is really these teams are starting to integrate with public safety and looking down the future. So I think I've covered most everything here. Yep. Okay, so the last thing I talked about is FirstNet, and I think it's been alluded to a little bit here. And so some folks might know what FirstNet is, some might not. It goes back to the national, what is being called the National Public Safety Broadband Network. Essentially, both the Hurricane Katrina Commission and the 911 Commission said we need to have a nationwide network. Everyone kind of said, yeah, that's great, that's great, that's great. So if a lot of folks remember back when I was at AdCom, we actually applied for and were awarded a pilot project to basically build a 4th generation data network that will be only available to public safety and other public entities. AdCom is continuing to build that. They are one of the handful of folks that are going to continue. And so what happened with HR 3630, as Darrell alluded to, is that the federal government finally got around to doing something, and they allocated the D block to public safety. So now public safety has 20 megahertz of spectrum in the 700 megahertz range, which is prime data